Are you consistent in your healing? You see, consistency is a unique piece that plays into healing that a lot of people don't really talk about and don't really view with that much respect. In reality, like consistency is one of the biggest things that will help you in your healing process. Let me kind of explain it in a couple different ways here. So, when we talk through this piece of consistency, I want you to first think of repetition. And when you think of repetition, I want you to think of tying your shoe. When you had this time of learning how to tie your shoe, at the very first time, like you didn't know how to do it, right? Like you didn't know how to be able to put together. You were confused what loop went where, how to be able to tie it. But then you finally got it, and it was amazing. It was great. And then you start doing it over and over. Now you get to the place where you tie your shoe and you don't even think about it. Like it's just muscle memory, right? This brings about this piece of confidence. Why? Because of the repetition. Like the overall, this repeated over and over and over again. So now I'm more confident in who I am and what I do because of this repetition of tying my shoe. Okay. In this place of narcissistic abuse, you have to get confident that you can actually trust yourself. Because oftentimes you don't trust the other person. You don't trust any new relationships. You barely even trust yourself to make the right decision because you're like, well, I screwed up before. I might screw up again. So I need you to understand there's this piece that needs to happen inside of healing that is talking about consistency and consistency of you actually investing into you. Let me explain how this works. Oftentimes people are like, let me invest in myself. And they do this in a couple different ways. We divide it up into 4, which is focusing on like your fitness, your relationships, your spiritual connection, or your business. But when we first do this, we have to focus on your relationship, right? Because that's what you're here for. That's why you're watching this content, because it's about narcissistic abuse. It's about toxic people. It's about you bettering your life, etc. Okay, but oftentimes we have to focus on, hey, how are we actually doing this consistently? Like, how are we helping you rewire the stories you believe consistently? If we don't, then oftentimes it's very haphazard. Okay, let me give you like an illustration. When we're thinking through this idea, I want you to consider just like on a timeline here of the direction that you're going, and I want you to consider just one simple thing here. And that's, what is the consistency that you're actually showing up with? So for instance, you're like, hey, day 1, I'm going to take care of myself. And you value yourself, you focus on yourself. Day 2, you're like, hey, I'm going to focus on myself. Day 3, you're like, hey, I'm going to focus on myself. I'm going to walk the dog. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do all these things. Day 4, you're like, hey, this is what's happening. This is going to be great. And you keep focusing on it. But then life happens. And like you skip a day. Nothing happens. You skip a day. Nothing happens. You're like, hey, it's been too busy. And like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to invest in myself here. And then you skip a day. And you're like, okay, fine. I'm getting back on track. We're going to do this. And so you're like, I'm going to invest myself. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to do I'm going to work on my journal. I'm going to focus on like my healing mantras. I'm going to do all this stuff. You're like, hey, I spent like 2 hours today working all this stuff. Amazing, right? But then the next day you're like, you run out of time. You only have time to do a couple things. And then you have a time to do like one thing. Then you miss a day. Then you're like, nope, we're not going to do this. Then you get back on track. Then you're like, this is going to be amazing. And you start getting much more done. And so what I'm trying to illustrate is a lot of times people healing, people are like, oh, it's okay. It goes up and down. Yes, that is true. It goes up and down how you're dealing with the triggers, but it doesn't have to go up and down in your consistency. So many times when people say that, you're like, well, healing isn't linear. Totally true. It's not linear. It does go up and down in how it feels, but it doesn't have to go up and down in your ability to show up consistently. That's the piece. It's like, oh, well, healing goes up and down. That means one day I take care of myself and the next day I don't. No, that's how you got trained to live inside the narcissistic relationship. That's not how we train people now. Because if you want that, you're not going to actually look for the healing. You're going to be like selling yourself short and you're going to heal much longer than what you could because you're like, hey, well, this is just how it is. Is it? No, that's how you've been believing it to actually be. What if it was different? Like, what if this actual graph was completely different and instead of it being so haphazard, there were just these small things? Every single day. You're like every single day investing in yourself. Not a ton, just small. Maybe it grows. Maybe it gets a little bit bigger. Maybe it just stays the same. Either way, it's this radical consistency. See, this is the thing that people don't want. Everybody wants the hack. Everybody wants the quick fix. Everyone wants the quick thing that's going to get them healed quick and fast and wonderful and back to the current reality of who they used to be. But the problem is, as you do that, you continue to sell yourself short and ride the roller coaster of healing, being like, oh, this will get better. I'll figure this out. But then you don't show up for yourself consistently. What are you doing? You're breaking trust with yourself. Like you're hurting your relationship with yourself. Just like the narcissist did to you, you continue the narcissist work farther out. Now you look at this and at a glance, you're like, well, okay, but like that doesn't seem like they grew much more. But look at this. This is the compound effect. There's like 30 different lines there versus the top, there's like 10. And so you need to be able to see, like, there is a difference of what's actually going on here. It's just you normally sell yourself short thinking like, well, I got to do this to the fullest. So I got to do this to the best. What if we just took the first step? Like, what if we just got you on a schedule? What if we just got you making your bed? What if we just got you actually like taking time to meditate 5 minutes a day to clear your mind? What if we just got you grounded every single day? What if we just started to work on one trigger a day? What would this do? You see, when we look at this graph, a lot of times people think like, oh, well, this will get me the growth. And they focus and they like, yay, and then down, yay, and then down, yay, and down. And ultimately their growth just continues to go down. Why? Because they're not being consistent with themselves. Now, the flip side, which is really interesting with compound interest, is as you look at this, the bottom graph, you'd be like, okay, well, it looks like the bottom graph would just be flat. It'd just be straight. Like they'd just be doing stuff. That's not how it works. Because I want you to consider this in a different light. Say, for instance, this first line up here, let's say this first line, okay, so let's say here, first line right here. So let's say that first line is this right here. The second line, that you can't see because it's hidden with blue, let's say it's this. And I want you to consider for a moment, it's like as you're doing these things, it's like these layers that are adding on. It's like additional support that's actually happening as you move forward. So the graph that's actually up above, it's not this consistent thing of like, oh, it's only going to slowly increase or hardly increase at all. No, it increases a lot faster. This is the wild part because people are like, well, that's not exciting. No, it's boring. And exactly, that's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be boring. But the thing is, many of you can't do boring stuff consistently because it's not exciting. So as a result, you still are looking for your healing. Like you're still struggling with this because it's been boring. So let me explain really quick. What does this look like? How does the graph look different? It means, hey, you start your healing process and you're like, okay, this is going this way. This is kind of boring, not really growing. Okay, it's growing a little bit. Cool. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, the compound interest starts to take effect and all of a sudden you start to ramp up. You're like, that can't happen that way. It does. I'm living proof of it because of how this has worked in my life. We have living proof of it on multiple of our websites showing people that have actually accomplished it, that have actually seen the compound interest of them investing in themselves every single day and how it transforms their lives. Absolutely works. The problem is you will get to this place here. And you will get to this place here and you will look at it and you'll be like, this isn't exciting. This hasn't moved me enough. So therefore, I'm going to stop. And as a result, you start going down the same path as the graph above where you slowly decline because you're no longer investing in you. You're no longer building on you, one step at a time. What would happen if you invested on you on a day-to-day basis? This is what I do. This is how I teach people. This is how we focus on their growth and development every single day, helping move them faster and faster towards their goal. Does that mean we're a quick fix? No. Does that mean we just channel people super fast through? No. That means as you actually do the basic, boring shit every single day, you get the end result faster. Like, how does that make sense? Because of the graph. It makes sense because we're compounding it. We're compounding this over and over and over. But all of a sudden, you've gone farther than you've ever dreamed you could have gone. Not because I told you, hey, we're going to walk 300 miles. I just asked you to walk 1 mile a day. And in a year, you're a lot farther than what you ever expected. This is what we do and how we work with people every single day. If you're interested in working with me and understanding how we help you do this, go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough to hear a video that I put together for you to listen and see and understand, and a lot of testimonials on that page of how this has transformed people's lives if you show up consistently. We'll love to be able to help you take that step. rawmotivations.com/breakthrough.